I'm Rebecca Collins, 36, sitting in my new office with the nameplate Superintendent Collins gleaming on my desk, deliberately ignoring the stream of apologetic texts from my family. My brother and sister excluded me from Dad's 70th birthday celebration because being just a teacher wasn't prestigious enough for their corporate crowd. So instead of wallowing in hurt, I poured myself into the superintendent application I'd been hesitating to submit. The irony? While they were toasting Dad without me, the school board chairman was calling to offer me the position that would change everything after years of being the family disappointment. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Growing up in suburban Denver, my childhood with my siblings seemed ideal from the outside. Our father, Richard, built a successful real estate development company from nothing, and our mother, Diana, managed their investment portfolio with shrewd precision. Together, they provided us with a sprawling mountain view home, European vacations, and every opportunity 3 children could want. I'm the middle child, sandwiched between my older brother Nathan, who's 39, and my younger sister Vanessa, who's 33. As children, we got along well enough despite our vastly different personalities. Nathan was always the ambitious one, laser-focused on following Dad's footsteps into business. Even in elementary school, he'd organize neighborhood kids into mock companies, appointing himself CEO while assigning others less glamorous roles. By high school, he was investing his allowance in stocks and spending weekends shadowing Dad at the office instead of attending football games. Vanessa, the baby of the family, was our mother's protégé, polished, socially adept, and naturally attuned to status symbols. While other teenage girls experimented with fashion trends, Vanessa could identify designer brands at a glance and understood the social currency of having the right possessions. She graduated from an exclusive private university with a marketing degree and quickly climbed the corporate ladder at a luxury goods company. Then there was me, the family anomaly. Where Nathan was business-minded and Vanessa was status-conscious, I was drawn to books, ideas, and helping others. My elementary school teachers called me their little professor because I'd often gather younger students and patiently explain concepts they struggled with. While my siblings collected material possessions, I collected moments of connection. Rebecca has such a beautiful heart, teachers would tell my parents at conferences. She has a real gift for explaining difficult concepts. My parents would smile politely at these comments, but later at home, the messaging was clear. Being nice is lovely, Rebecca, but nice doesn't build retirement accounts. By high school, our divergent paths were firmly established. Nathan was class president and the leader of the investment club. Vanessa was homecoming queen and social committee chair. I was tutoring struggling students after school and volunteering at the local literacy center. When college application season arrived, Nathan chose Wharton for business, Vanessa selected Northwestern for its prestigious marketing program and social connections, and I enrolled in the education program at the University of Colorado. The disappointment was palpable when I announced my choice at dinner. Teaching? Dad's fork paused midway to his mouth. With your grades, you could go into law or medicine. The starting salary for teachers in Colorado is abysmal, Mom added, already calculating the financial implications. You'll never be able to afford the lifestyle you're accustomed to. Only my grandmother Ellen, Mom's mother, who had been a school librarian before retirement, showed genuine enthusiasm. Teaching is a calling, she told me privately that night. Not everyone hears it, but those who do change lives in ways that can't be measured in dollars. I clung to Grandma Ellen's words through college, as the divide between my siblings and me grew wider. When they came home for holidays, conversations revolved around Nathan's internships at prestigious firms and Vanessa's networking with influential fashion executives. My stories about connecting with struggling students or developing innovative teaching methods were met with polite nods before the topic shifted back to real careers. Rebecca still playing with crayons and picture books? Nathan would joke to family friends, as though my chosen profession was merely an extended childhood game rather than a serious career. After graduation, our paths diverged further. Nathan moved to New York and joined a high-profile investment firm, eventually starting his own wealth management company. Vanessa settled in Chicago. working her way up to marketing director for a luxury retail corporation. I took a position teaching 4th grade at Pinecrest Elementary in a working-class neighborhood of Denver. My tiny apartment filled with student artwork and thank you notes couldn't have been more different from Nathan's Manhattan penthouse or Vanessa's sleek Chicago condo. While they posted social media updates about exotic vacations and charity galas, I was spending summers developing curriculum units and weekends grading papers. The first major family rift occurred when I was 28. After 6 years of teaching, I was offered a position as curriculum coordinator for my school district, a significant promotion that would allow me to impact thousands of students by developing more effective teaching methods. I was ecstatic and called my parents immediately to share the news. "That's nice, dear," Mom said distractedly. "Did you hear Nathan just closed a 7-figure deal with that tech startup? They're featuring him in Forbes next month." Later that week, my parents flew to New York for Nathan's feature article celebration but couldn't find time to attend the small ceremony where I received an Innovation in Education award. "It's just such a busy time," Dad explained over the phone. "You understand. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us." Now back to the story. I did understand, all too clearly. In the Collins family hierarchy, teaching ranked far below business achievements. Still, I loved my work. Each day brought new challenges and profound rewards that couldn't be quantified on a balance sheet. When Mateo, a student who had arrived speaking almost no English, wrote his first complete story in my class, the pride in his eyes was worth more than any paycheck. When Aisha, who had started the year declaring she hated math, discovered she actually enjoyed solving problems after I developed games to help her engage with numbers, her transformation was my true compensation. My closest friend and colleague, Olivia Chen, saw my situation with painful clarity. We had met during new teacher orientation and bonded over our shared passion for education innovation. Unlike me, Olivia came from a family of educators who celebrated her career choice. "Your family has created different value systems for each of you," she observed one evening as we shared takeout in my classroom while planning the next day's lessons. "They measure Nathan's worth by his financial achievements, Vanessa's by her social status, and they simply don't have a framework for valuing what you do." Despite the frustrations, I maintained relationships with my family. When Vanessa's engagement to Bradley Harrison, the son of a prominent Chicago family, ended abruptly after she discovered his gambling addiction, I was the one who flew to Chicago to help her through the emotional aftermath. When Nathan experienced a significant investment loss that he couldn't bring himself to tell our parents about, I was the one who listened to his fears and helped him regain perspective. "You're the most emotionally intelligent person in this family, Becca," Nathan admitted during one vulnerable moment, using my childhood nickname that only appeared when his guard was down. "I don't know how you always know the right thing to say. It's what I do all day with 25 9-year-olds, I replied with a smile. Emotional intelligence is survival in a classroom. These moments of genuine connection with my siblings made the overall dynamic bearable, even as the pattern of undervaluing my career continued through family gatherings, holiday celebrations, and daily interactions. "When are you going to get a real job?" relatives would ask at family reunions. "Still playing school?" family friends would inquire with condescending smiles. "Such a shame to waste your potential." Dad would sigh after a few drinks at holiday gatherings. The comments stung, but I'd developed a thick skin over the years. My classroom successes and the relationships I built with students and their families gave me a sense of purpose that transcended my family's narrow definition of achievement. By my mid-30s, I had advanced to become the assistant principal at Pinecrest Elementary, responsible for teacher development and curriculum oversight. It was demanding work with modest compensation compared to my siblings' 6-figure salaries, but it aligned perfectly with my values and strengths. Olivia, who had become principal at another school in our district, never stopped encouraging me to aim higher. "You have a vision for education that could transform our entire district," she insisted during our weekly coffee meetups. You should consider applying for the superintendent position when Dr. Marshall retires next year. I always deflected these suggestions. I'm happy where I am, I'd say, though part of me was intrigued by the possibility of influencing education at a district level. The truth was more complicated. Years of family messaging about my career being somehow lesser had taken root deeper than I cared to admit. The superintendent position would mean public scrutiny, board meetings with community leaders, and high-stakes decision-making. Did I really have what it took? Or was I just a teacher, as my family had always implied? My reluctance to pursue advancement changed abruptly in February when Dad's 70th birthday approached. Mom had been planning the celebration for months, a black-tie gala at the Denver Athletic Club, where Dad's business associates, golf friends, and our extended family would gather to celebrate his 7 decades. I assumed my involvement was a given. Despite our differences, I loved my father deeply and had already purchased a thoughtful gift: a custom-bound collection of letters from former employees, business partners, and family members sharing how he had impacted their lives. I had spent weeks secretly collecting these testimonials, wanting to give him something meaningful, rather than another material possession. 2 weeks before the event, I called Mom to confirm some details and offer help with final arrangements. "About the party," she began, her voice taking on the careful tone she used when delivering unwelcome news. "We've had to make some adjustments to the guest list. The response rate was higher than expected, and the venue has strict capacity limits." "No problem," I replied. "I don't need a +1. I'll come solo." "Actually, Rebecca," she continued, even more carefully, "it's more complicated than that. Your father really wants this event to focus on his business legacy. The guest list is primarily colleagues, investors, and clients who've been part of his professional journey." It took me a moment to understand what she wasn't saying. "Mom, are you telling me I'm not invited to Dad's birthday celebration?" The silence on the other end confirmed my interpretation before she found her words. "It's not that you're not invited exactly. It's just that the event has taken on a certain professional character. Nathan will be giving a speech about taking over the company. Vanessa's firm is handling the event planning as a professional courtesy. It makes sense for them to be there in multiple capacities." "And it doesn't make sense for me to be there?" I asked, my voice steady despite the hurt building in my chest. "Rebecca, please try to understand. This is an important networking opportunity for your father. The governor will be attending, along with several state senators and CEOs. The conversation will naturally center around business, investments, and development projects. You'd feel out of place." What she meant, but couldn't quite bring herself to say, was that my presence as just a teacher wouldn't add value to the professional image my father wanted to project on his milestone birthday. "I see," I said simply, too stunned to argue. "We'll have a small family dinner the following weekend," she offered as consolation. "Something casual where we can focus just on family." After ending the call, I sat motionless at my kitchen table, the rejection washing over me in waves. It wasn't just about missing a party. It was the culmination of a lifetime of messages that my chosen path was somehow inadequate, that my contributions to society were less valuable than generating wealth or acquiring status. I called Olivia, barely keeping my voice from breaking as I explained the situation. "That's beyond hurtful," she said, outrage evident in her tone. "It's one thing for them to not understand your career, but to exclude you from a family celebration because of it? That crosses a line." "I don't know why I'm even surprised," I said, finally allowing tears to fall. "This has been the subtext of every family interaction for decades. It's just never been stated so explicitly before." "What are you going to do?" Olivia asked. It was a good question. My usual pattern would be to swallow the hurt, attend the consolation family dinner the following weekend, and pretend everything was fine. I'd spend Dad's actual birthday feeling sorry for myself, then move on with my life until the next painful reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. But something felt different this time. Perhaps it was the accumulation of years of subtle dismissals suddenly crystallized into this overt rejection. Perhaps it was turning 36 and realizing I'd spent nearly 4 decades trying to earn approval for a path I didn't need to justify. Whatever the reason, I wasn't willing to follow the established script this time. "I don't know yet," I told Olivia. But I'm not going to sit at home feeling sorry for myself on that day. After we hung up, I paced my apartment, mind racing with possibilities. I could plan a weekend trip, perhaps to the mountains, or even fly somewhere warm for a few days. I could schedule a spa day and dinner with friends who actually valued me. As I considered these options, my laptop screen caught my attention. It was open to the school district's internal job board, displaying the recently posted superintendent position. Dr. Marshall had announced his retirement, and the board was seeking his replacement, someone with visionary leadership, deep educational expertise, and a commitment to excellence for all students. I had been avoiding even looking at the posting, despite Olivia's encouragement. The application deadline was, I checked the date, exactly 2 weeks away, coinciding precisely with Dad's birthday celebration that I wouldn't be attending. Was this a sign? I'd always believed everything happens for a reason, though I rarely shared this somewhat mystical belief with my pragmatic family. I clicked on the application details and began reading the requirements more carefully. Qualified candidates needed a minimum of 10 years in education, with at least 5 in leadership roles. Check. A master's degree in educational leadership or related field. Check. A proven track record of implementing successful educational initiatives. Check. On paper, I was qualified. But the superintendent would need to navigate complex political landscapes, manage an enormous budget, and become the public face of education for our entire district. These were areas where I had limited experience, and the thought of stepping into such a visible role triggered every insecurity my family had ever instilled about my capabilities beyond the classroom. Still, as I continued reading the position description, I realized that the core requirements aligned perfectly with my passions and strengths. Developing curriculum that meets diverse student needs, supporting teacher growth, building community partnerships, and advocating for educational excellence. This wasn't just an administrative role. It was an opportunity to shape the educational experience for thousands of students. With sudden clarity, I knew exactly how I would spend the day of my father's birthday. Instead of wallowing in hurt or trying to distract myself with temporary pleasures, I would invest in my future and the future of education in our community. I would complete and submit my application for the superintendent position. The decision felt both terrifying and exhilarating. If my family thought being just a teacher wasn't prestigious enough for Dad's birthday party, how would they react if I became the superintendent of one of Colorado's largest school districts? The thought made me smile for the first time since that painful phone call with my mother. The next morning, I texted Olivia. "I'm applying for the superintendent position. We'll need your help preparing." Her response came seconds later. "Finally! Coming over tonight with champagne and interview prep materials." Over the next 2 weeks, I divided my time between my assistant principal duties and preparing my application. Olivia helped me refine my educational philosophy statement and practice responses to potential interview questions. We worked on articulating my vision for the district's future, identifying specific initiatives I would prioritize, and developing strategies for addressing the inevitable challenges. "You're ready for this," Olivia assured me repeatedly. "You've been ready for years." I reached out to former supervisors, mentors, and colleagues for letters of recommendation, overwhelmed by their enthusiastic responses. Dr. Marshall himself, upon hearing I was applying, stopped by my office. "I was hoping you would throw your hat in the ring," he said, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. "The district needs someone with your combination of classroom wisdom and administrative skill." As Dad's birthday approached, my mother called several times, each conversation an awkward dance around the elephant in the room. She confirmed the family-only dinner for the weekend after the gala, mentioned which of Dad's favorite dishes she would prepare, and carefully avoided any direct reference to my exclusion from the main event. During one call, she mentioned casually, "Nathan's being featured in the Business Journal this month for his expansion into sustainable investing." "That's nice," I replied, choosing not to share my own news about applying for the superintendent position. Some part of me wanted to keep this possibility protected from their potential dismissal, at least until I knew the outcome. The morning of Dad's birthday, and my application deadline, arrived. While my family prepared for their black tie gala, I put the finishing touches on my application materials. I had taken the day off work to focus completely on this task. wanting every word to reflect my genuine passion for education and vision for our district's future. At precisely 2 p.m., the time I had mentally scheduled for submission, I uploaded all required documents, clicked Submit Application, and watched as the confirmation message appeared on my screen. Thank you for applying for the position of Superintendent of Schools, Denver Valley School District. Your application has been received. The review process will begin after the closing date. A strange sense of peace washed over me. Regardless of the outcome, I had taken a significant step toward claiming my professional worth. Instead of allowing my family's narrow definition of success to diminish me, I had chosen to pursue excellence on my own terms. I closed my laptop and prepared to enjoy the rest of my day. I had planned a small celebration of my own, dinner with Olivia and 2 other close friends at my favorite restaurant, followed by a concert at the Botanical Gardens. As I dressed for the evening, selecting a flowing blue dress that always made me feel confident, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "The gala is beautiful. Your father is so pleased with the turnout. The governor just arrived. Wish you could have found a way to fit in with this crowd." That last sentence, probably intended as a wistful expression of maternal desire to include all her children, inadvertently revealed the true nature of my exclusion. The issue wasn't venue capacity or professional focus. It was the perception that I, as an educator, simply didn't fit in with the prestigious crowd my parents valued. I chose not to respond immediately, not wanting to say something and hurt that I might later regret. Instead, I finished getting ready and headed out to meet my friends, people who appreciated me completely for who I was, rather than measuring me against arbitrary standards of status or wealth. Our dinner was filled with laughter, genuine conversation, and zero pretense. We discussed books, shared teaching stories, debated educational philosophies, and supported each other through personal challenges. Not once did anyone ask about my salary, job title, or professional prestige. The conversations centered on ideas, relationships, and meaningful work, the currencies I valued most. As we walked to the Botanical Gardens for the concert, Olivia linked her arm through mine. "How are you feeling about missing your dad's birthday?" "Surprisingly okay," I answered, realizing as I said it that it was true. I've spent decades trying to earn my way into a value system that doesn't align with my own. Today I chose to fully embrace what matters to me instead. "That's growth," she said approvingly. And regardless of what happens with the superintendent application, taking that step was a victory in itself. The evening concluded with beautiful music under the stars, surrounded by friends who saw and appreciated my authentic self. As I drove home, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation, mourning the family connection I wished I had while celebrating the genuine relationships I'd built outside those constraints. I arrived home to find my phone filled with notifications, texts and photos from the gala shared in the family group chat, all showcasing the glamorous event I hadn't been welcome to attend. Pictures of Nathan giving his speech about the company's future, Vanessa networking with state officials, Mom and Dad beaming beside the governor, each image a reminder of what my family considered truly important. I scrolled through them briefly, then set my phone aside. As I prepared for bed, I realized something significant had shifted within me. For the first time, I viewed these images not with longing to be included or hurt at being excluded, but with a clear-eyed understanding that this was their world, not mine. And that was perfectly okay. My world, filled with curious students, dedicated educators, and the daily opportunity to shape young minds, didn't need validation from people who couldn't recognize its value. This realization didn't erase the pain of rejection, but it placed it in a new context that felt less personally devastating. I slept more peacefully that night than I had in weeks, no longer torn between who I was and who my family wanted me to be. Whatever came next, I had taken a stand for my own worth. What I didn't know then was just how dramatically things would change in the coming weeks, or how my quiet act of self-affirmation would set in motion events that would transform not only my professional life, but my family dynamics as well. The superintendent application I had submitted instead of attending Dad's birthday celebration was about to open doors, I had barely allowed myself to imagine and force a long-overdue reckoning within the Collins family. The week after submitting my superintendent application unfolded in a blur of ordinary responsibilities masking extraordinary inner change. Each morning I walked into Pinecrest Elementary with a subtle but unmistakable shift in my posture. Taking that step toward the superintendent position had awakened something within me, a quiet confidence that had always existed beneath layers of family-imposed doubt. "You seem different," remarked Teresa, our school secretary, who missed nothing with her 20 years of experience reading people. "There's something lighter about you." I smiled. I finally stopped carrying something heavy that was never mine to hold. The promised family-only dinner to celebrate Dad's birthday arrived the weekend after the gala. As I parked outside my parents' sprawling Tudor-style home in Denver's most exclusive neighborhood, I steeled myself for the evening ahead. Normally, I'd have spent the drive rehearsing neutral topics and preparing mentally to deflect the inevitable comparisons to my siblings' achievements. This time, I simply decided to be authentically present. No more, no less. Mom greeted me at the door with her characteristic air kiss beside my cheek, a gesture that always managed to convey both affection and careful distance. "Rebecca, darling, come in. Everyone's in the living room." The living room presented a tableau of Collins' family dynamics in perfect form. Dad occupied his leather armchair like a throne. Nathan stood by the fireplace, gesturing animatedly about market projections, while Vanessa perched elegantly on the sofa, examining her manicure between nods at Nathan's monologue. "The birthday girl has arrived," Dad announced when he spotted me, using the childhood nickname that had once been affectionate but now carried a subtle, infantilizing tone. I kissed his cheek and handed him my gift, not the book of testimonials I'd originally prepared, which now seemed too intimate for our current relationship, but an elegant fountain pen from a local artisan. "Happy birthday, Dad." "Thank you, sweetheart," he said, setting it aside without opening it. Nathan was just explaining how the tax code changes will affect investment strategies this year. "Fascinating stuff." "I'm sure it is," I replied, choosing a seat and accepting the glass of wine Mom handed me. Dinner proceeded exactly as I'd anticipated, a carefully choreographed showcase of Nathan and Vanessa's professional victories, with occasional prompts from our parents to elaborate on particularly impressive details. Nathan's firm just signed 3 new clients with portfolios over $20 million each, Dad announced proudly as he carved the prime rib. And Vanessa's marketing campaign increased their luxury watch sales by 30% last quarter, Mom added, patting my sister's hand. In the past, I would have shrunk a little smaller with each accomplishment highlighted, each implied comparison to my modest career. This time, I simply enjoyed my meal and offered genuine congratulations when appropriate. The change must have been noticeable because halfway through dinner, Vanessa tilted her head curiously in my direction. "You're quiet tonight, Becca. Everything okay at school?" The question contained the familiar subtle diminishment, "at school," rather than "at work" or "in your career." But I no longer felt the sting. "Everything's fine," I replied. "Just some interesting professional developments in progress." "Oh?" Mom perked up, likely hoping I'd finally considered leaving education for something more lucrative. "What kind of developments?" For a brief moment, I considered sharing my superintendent application but quickly decided against it. Their reaction, whether dismissive or falsely enthusiastic, would add nothing valuable to my experience. "Just some new district initiatives I'm helping shape," I said instead, a response truthful yet safely vague. Nathan jumped in with a story about a recent business trip to Singapore, and attention shifted away from me. I observed my family with newfound clarity, their insecurities masked by achievements, their worth so deeply entangled with external validation. For the first time, I felt not anger or hurt, but a profound compassion for the narrow confines of success they'd constructed for themselves. As Mom served coffee and Dad's favorite chocolate cake, he raised his glass in a toast. "To family," he said. "Nothing more important." The irony wasn't lost on me, but I clinked my glass alongside my siblings without comment. This wasn't the moment for confrontation. I'd already made my statement through action rather than words by pursuing the superintendent position. When the evening concluded, Mom walked me to the door. "We missed you at the gala," she said. her tone suggesting she was fulfilling an obligation rather than expressing genuine regret. "I doubt that," I replied with a small smile, not unkindly, but honestly. "But thank you for saying so." Her eyes widened slightly at my directness. "Rebecca." "It's okay, Mom," I interrupted gently. "We don't need to pretend. I've accepted that my path doesn't align with the family's definition of success, and that's perfectly fine." For a moment, she seemed about to say something meaningful, perhaps even acknowledge the hurt they'd caused. Instead, she straightened her posture and patted my arm. "Well, we always want what's best for you, dear." "I know you believe that," I said, hugging her briefly before stepping outside. "Good night, Mom." Driving home, I felt neither the usual post-family gathering resentment nor the lingering sadness that typically followed me for days. Instead, I experienced a calm certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be in my life journey, regardless of whether anyone else recognized its value. 2 weeks passed without word about my superintendent application. I immersed myself in end-of-year activities at Pinecrest, helping teachers prepare for standardized testing and finalizing summer school plans for our most vulnerable students. Each day brought its own rewards. A struggling reader decoding a difficult passage independently, a shy student finding her voice during a class presentation, a teacher successfully implementing a challenging new curriculum. These moments, invisible to those who measured success in profit margins or social connections, filled my professional life with purpose. They weren't merely consolation prizes for choosing education over more prestigious careers. They were the very reason I'd chosen this path. Olivia checked in regularly, equal parts supportive friend and impatient cheerleader. "Heard anything yet?" She'd text every few days. "Still waiting," I'd reply, trying to manage both her expectations and my own. The waiting period became an unexpected gift, a chance to examine my motivations and ensure I truly wanted the superintendent position for the right reasons. Was I pursuing it primarily to prove something to my family? Or because I genuinely believed I could make meaningful contributions at the district level? After honest reflection, I knew it was predominantly the latter. Yes, part of me hoped professional advancement might finally earn my family's respect, but that was secondary to my vision for educational improvement. I wanted to implement research-based literacy initiatives across all elementary schools, expand arts education in underserved communities, and create more inclusive environments for our diverse student population. These goals existed independently of my family's approval. 3 weeks after submitting my application, I received an email requesting an interview with the school board the following Tuesday afternoon. The timing couldn't have been worse. I had a critical teacher evaluation scheduled that exact time slot. "I'll cover your evaluation," Olivia offered immediately when I called her with the dilemma. "This interview is priority 1. But Mr. Sanchez needs consistent feedback on his classroom management strategies," I protested. "We've been working on his development plan all semester." Olivia's sigh carried through the phone. "Rebecca, this is exactly why you'd make an excellent superintendent, and exactly why you've been stuck at the assistant principal level. You prioritize everyone else's needs above your own professional advancement." Her words struck uncomfortably close to home. Wasn't this the pattern that had defined my entire life? Always responsible, always accommodating, always putting others first, whether students, teachers, or family members. "You're right," I conceded. "I'll reschedule Mr. Sanchez and confirm the interview." "That's my girl," Olivia cheered. "Now, weekend prep session at my place? I'll supply the coffee and tough interview questions." Saturday morning found us in Olivia's sunlit apartment, surrounded by educational journals, district budget reports, and notes on current educational challenges facing our community. Her background in educational psychology made her particularly adept at anticipating the behavioral questions the board might ask. "How would you handle conflict between competing stakeholder interests?" She fired at me, adopting the stern tone of our most intimidating board member. "I'd ensure all perspectives were thoroughly heard," I began, then caught myself falling into platitudes. Olivia had taught me better than that. Taking a deep breath, I started again with more specificity. First, I'd identify the underlying values driving each position. Often conflicts arise not from fundamental disagreements, but from different approaches to shared goals. I'd look for these common grounds while acknowledging legitimate differences. For example, in last year's debate over redistricting, both sides ultimately wanted quality education for their children, but disagreed on implementation methods. By refocusing discussion on shared values, we created a compromise that addressed both communities' core concerns. Olivia nodded approvingly. Much better. Concrete examples always trump generalities. We continued for hours, dissecting potential questions about budget management, curriculum development, teacher retention, community engagement, and crisis response. With each practice answer, I grew more confident in both my preparation and my genuine qualifications for the position. You know what impresses me most? Olivia said as we took a late afternoon break. You're not just talking about theories or throwing around educational buzzwords. Every answer reflects actual experience and real results you've achieved. That's the advantage of starting in the classroom, I replied. I've seen how policies affect actual students and teachers. It's not abstract for me. That perspective is tragically rare at the highest administrative levels, Olivia noted. Too many superintendents have been away from classrooms so long they've forgotten what teaching actually entails. By Sunday evening, I felt as prepared as possible. I'd reviewed district data, refreshed my knowledge of current educational research, and practiced articulating my vision concisely. The only preparation left was selecting an appropriately professional outfit. I settled on a tailored navy suit, conservative enough for the board's traditional members, but paired with a vibrant emerald blouse that reflected my personality. The color choice was deliberate. Research showed that green conveyed both trustworthiness and innovation, qualities I wanted to project. Monday passed in a blur of normal school activities overshadowed by pre-interview nerves. That evening, instead of obsessively reviewing notes as I might have done in the past, I took a long walk through my neighborhood, letting my thoughts settle naturally. The fresh air and physical movement calmed my mind more effectively than any additional studying could have. Tuesday morning, I arrived at Pinecrest earlier than usual to ensure all my responsibilities were covered during my afternoon absence. My phone pinged with a good luck text from Olivia, followed unexpectedly by one from Nathan. Heard through district grapevine you're interviewing for superintendent today. Bold move, sis. Good luck. I stared at my phone in surprise. How had Nathan heard about my interview? His real estate developments occasionally involved school district properties, so he had connections on the board, but I hadn't expected my application to reach his radar. Thanks, I texted back simply, unsure what else to add. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared before his response came through. Dad and Mom don't know. Figured you'd tell them if/when you wanted to. This unexpected discretion from my usually status-conscious brother touched me. Appreciated, I replied. The morning passed quickly, and before I knew it, I was changing into my suit in my office bathroom. As I applied a touch of lipstick, I studied my reflection, not just my appearance but the person behind it. The woman looking back at me had evolved from someone seeking external validation to someone standing firmly in her own worth. You're ready, I told my reflection. Not because they might approve, but because you're genuinely qualified. The school board interview was scheduled at district headquarters, an imposing brick building that had intimidated me as a new teacher 15 years earlier. Now I walked through its doors with the confidence of someone who had earned her place in these halls through years of dedicated service and measurable results. The receptionist directed me to the boardroom where 7 people sat around a massive oak table, 5 elected board members and 2 district administrators, including Dr. Marshall, the retiring superintendent. Chair Marcus Williams, a distinguished former university president with a reputation for tough but fair questioning, rose to greet me. Ms. Collins, thank you for joining us. Please, have a seat. For the next 90 minutes, I fielded questions about everything from budget allocation strategies to my philosophy on standardized testing. Some questions were technical, requiring specific knowledge of educational policy and law. Others were behavioral, probing how I'd handle hypothetical scenarios from parent complaints to community crises. Throughout the interview, I remained present and authentic, neither minimizing my accomplishments nor exaggerating my expertise. When I didn't know something, I acknowledged it rather than bluffing, a transparency that seemed to impress rather than deter the panel. The final question came from Dr. Marshall himself. Ms. Collins, if appointed superintendent, what would be your first priority in the initial 100 days? I'd anticipated this question and could have offered the safe answer about assessment and relationship building that most candidates would provide. Instead, I chose honesty. While relationship development and thorough assessment would certainly be ongoing, my first tangible priority would be implementing our recently piloted literacy intervention program district-wide, I said. Our data shows it's increased reading proficiency by 27% among our most vulnerable students at the pilot schools. Every day we delay full implementation means more students falling behind. I'd secure the necessary resources and training to scale this program immediately while simultaneously building the relationships and assessment frameworks needed for longer-term initiatives. Dr. Marshall nodded with what appeared to be approval, though his poker face remained largely intact. Chair Williams closed the interview with standard formalities. We're interviewing several qualified candidates this week. You can expect our decision within 10 business days. Thank you for your time and thoughtful responses. As I gathered my portfolio, Dr. Marshall approached while the others filed out. You've grown tremendously since you were that eager first-year teacher asking me questions at the district curriculum fair, he said quietly. I had an excellent mentor, I replied, grateful for his years of guidance. The board has a difficult decision ahead, he continued. But regardless of their choice, I hope you recognize how far you've come. Not everyone would have the courage to pursue this position. His words stayed with me as I drove back to Pinecrest for the remaining hour of the school day. Courage. Was that what I demonstrated? It hadn't felt like courage so much as necessity. The natural next step in my professional journey and personal growth. Olivia cornered me the moment I returned to school. Well, how did it go? Tell me everything! It went. Well, I think, I said, suddenly exhausted as post-interview adrenaline faded. They asked challenging questions, but I felt prepared. Authentic, present. Those are good signs, she encouraged. When will you hear back? Up to 10 business days, I replied. So now we wait. The waiting proved more difficult than the preparation. Each day stretched endlessly as I attempted to focus on my regular responsibilities, while my mind constantly replayed interview moments, second-guessing responses and analyzing board members' expressions. After the first week without news, I forced myself to stop checking my email obsessively and threw myself into end-of-year activities at Pinecrest. Our fifth-grade graduation ceremony provided welcome distraction. Watching students I'd known since they were gap-toothed first-graders preparing to enter middle school filled me with bittersweet pride. 9 business days after the interview, not that I was counting, I stayed late at school finalizing teacher assignments for the following year. The building had emptied hours earlier, leaving me alone with spreadsheets and the gentle hum of the air conditioning. My phone rang, displaying a number I didn't recognize. Rebecca Collins speaking, I answered professionally, though my heart immediately accelerated. Ms. Collins, this is Marcus Williams from the school board. I gripped my desk edge. Good evening, Mr. Williams. I hope I'm not calling too late, he said, his tone frustratingly neutral. Not at all. I'm still at school, actually. Dedication noted, he replied, with what might have been a smile in his voice. I'm calling because the board has completed our deliberations regarding the superintendent position. My mouth went dry. I see. We interviewed several exceptional candidates, he continued, following the script I'd anticipated. The decision was not easy. I closed my eyes, preparing for the gentle letdown. In my mind, I was already composing a gracious response about appreciating the opportunity and continuing my commitment to the district. However, Williams continued, your combination of classroom experience, administrative skill, and clear vision for our district's future stood out unequivocally. We would like to offer you the position of Superintendent of Schools, effective July 1st. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. The words I'd hoped for but hadn't quite allowed myself to expect hung in the air between us. Miss Collins, are you still there? Yes, I managed finally. Yes, I'm here. I'm just processing the news. Understandable, he said warmly. It's a significant responsibility. We don't expect an immediate answer, though we would appreciate your decision within the week. That won't be necessary, I replied, finding my voice and my certainty simultaneously. I accept the position. It would be my honor to serve our district in this capacity. Excellent, Williams responded, sounding genuinely pleased. There will be paperwork, of course, and we'd like to schedule a formal introduction at next Tuesday's board meeting, if that works for your schedule. Tuesday works perfectly, I confirmed, my mind already racing with next steps. Wonderful. And Ms. Collins? The board was particularly impressed by your commitment to implementing evidence-based practices and your clear prioritization of student outcomes over administrative convenience. Those qualities are precisely what our district needs in its leadership. After we concluded the call, I sat motionless in my office, allowing the reality to sink in. Superintendent Collins. The position I'd been hesitant even to apply for was now mine, not because I'd sought status or prestige, but because I'd finally recognized and honored my own professional value. I called Olivia first. Her ecstatic response exactly what I needed. Complete, uncomplicated celebration without any undercurrent of surprise that I'd been selected. I knew it, she practically shouted through the phone. They would have been absolute fools to choose anyone else. We're celebrating this weekend. No arguments. My next call should have been to my parents, but I hesitated, the old fear of dismissal or faint praise resurfacing. Instead, I texted Nathan, got the superintendent position. Haven't told Mom and Dad yet. His response came quickly. Congratulations, Becca, that's major. Want me on standby when you tell them? His unexpected support brought tears to my eyes. Might take you up on that. Processing first. Standing by. Proud of you, sis. Those 4 words from my achievement-oriented brother affected me more deeply than I could have anticipated. When had he last expressed pride in anything I'd done? Had he ever? I drove home in a daze, the evening's significance still unfolding in my consciousness. The superintendent position represented not just professional advancement, but personal vindication, proof that my chosen path held legitimate value, regardless of my family's narrow metrics of success. At home, I poured a single glass of champagne I'd been saving for a special occasion, and stepped onto my small balcony overlooking the city lights. The Denver skyline sparkled against the backdrop of mountains, a view that had comforted me through many moments of doubt and disappointment. Tonight, it witnessed my triumph. I raised my glass to the night sky. To choosing your own definition of success, I toasted softly. And to the courage to pursue it, regardless of who understands. The next week would bring formal announcements, congratulations from colleagues, and eventually the unavoidable conversation with my parents. But for this moment, I allowed myself to simply exist in the pure satisfaction of achievement on my own terms. A woman who had finally stopped measuring her worth through others' eyes, and instead recognized the value of her unique contributions to the world. What I couldn't know then was how dramatically the superintendent position would transform not just my professional standing, but my family dynamics. The next board meeting, where I would be formally introduced to the community, would catalyze a reckoning none of us had anticipated, especially when the chairman addressed me as Madam Superintendent in front of the exact crowd my family had deemed too prestigious for just a teacher to join. The morning after receiving the superintendent offer, I woke before my alarm, mind already racing with possibilities. Sunlight streamed through my bedroom blinds, casting hopeful patterns across the quilt my grandmother had made, the one reminder of the family member who had always valued my educational path. I traced the intricate stitching, thinking how proud she would have been of this moment. This one follows her heart, Grandma Ellen had told my parents at my college graduation when they'd expressed disappointment at my teaching plans. The world needs more heart followers and fewer followers of convention. Now, 15 years later, following my heart had led to the district's top position. I smiled at the poetic justice. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Superintendent Collins, how does it feel this morning? Still real? Alternating between exhilaration and terror, I replied honestly. Meeting with HR at 10 to discuss transition details. The day unfolded in a whirlwind of activity. The HR director walked me through salary negotiations, a substantial increase that would still raise eyebrows in my family's financial circles, benefit packages, and contract terms. Dr. Marshall invited me to shadow him for the remaining weeks of the school year to ensure a smooth transition. The principal at Pinecrest hugged me with genuine happiness when I shared my news, though her eyes revealed concern about replacing me as assistant principal. "You've earned this," she assured me. "We'll miss you terribly, but the entire district deserves your leadership." By afternoon, the school board had issued a press release announcing my appointment. Congratulatory emails flooded my inbox from colleagues across the district. The teachers at Pinecrest organized an impromptu celebration in the staff lounge, complete with a hastily purchased cake declaring, "Congrats, Superintendent Collins," in wobbly blue icing. Amidst the celebration, my phone buzzed with a text from an unexpected source. My younger sister, Vanessa. "Nathan just told me your news. Impressive career move, sis. Call me when you can." The message surprised me. Vanessa and I had grown increasingly distant over the years, our conversations limited to obligatory family gatherings and the occasional birthday text. That she'd reached out voluntarily suggested Nathan had framed my appointment as something noteworthy even by their career standards. Before I could respond, another text arrived, this one from Mom. "Your father and I just heard about your new position from Nathan. Why didn't you tell us you were applying for such an important role? Call us when you can." The subtle accusation in her message, that I deliberately withheld information, was so typically my mother that I nearly laughed. Of course, she would focus on being out of the information loop, rather than on congratulating me for the achievement. I decided to handle each conversation separately, starting with Vanessa. I stepped away from the staff celebration and found a quiet corner in my office to make the call. "Rebecca, congratulations," Vanessa answered with unexpected enthusiasm. "Nathan said you beat out candidates from across the country." "That's what I hear," I replied, still adjusting to her positive tone. "It happened rather quickly." "Well, it's quite impressive," she continued. "Nathan looked up the district budget you'll be managing, nearly $300 million. That's substantial executive leadership." And there it was, the translation of my educational achievement into the metrics my family understood. Budget size, executive authority. Terms that quantified worth in their world. "The responsibility is significant," I acknowledged, "but I'm more focused on the 32,000 students whose educational experience I'll help shape." "Of course," Vanessa said quickly, though I could hear her mental recalibration. "That's the important part. Listen, I'm actually calling because I'm coming to Denver next week for a marketing conference. I thought maybe we could get dinner. It's been too long since we've had sister time." The invitation startled me. Vanessa rarely initiated one-on-one gatherings, particularly when family obligation didn't require it. "I'd like that," I said sincerely. "My schedule is hectic with the transition, but I can make Tuesday evening work." "Perfect. I'll make reservations at Altitude, that new rooftop restaurant downtown that everyone's talking about. My company's expense account," she added, as if assuming I couldn't afford such a venue on an educator's salary. Old habits died hard. After we hung up, I took a deep breath before calling my parents. This conversation would require more emotional fortification. Dad answered on the third ring. "Rebecca, your mother and I were just talking about you." "Hi, Dad. I assume Nathan shared my news?" "He did indeed. Superintendent of Schools. That's quite a title, much more substantial than we realized was possible in education. Why didn't you tell us you were pursuing this?" The question echoed Mom's text, revealing their shared perspective, that I had deliberately kept them in the dark rather than that they had shown so little interest in my career that I hadn't bothered sharing my ambitions. "It wasn't a secret, Dad. I simply wasn't discussing my professional plans during family gatherings where the focus was usually elsewhere." The gentle rebuke was subtle enough that he could ignore it if he chose. "Well, regardless, it's excellent news. Your mother is particularly pleased. She's already called half her friends. Apparently, several school board members belong to her garden club, though she had no idea you were under consideration." Of course, Mom would immediately focus on the social capital my position might add to her standing. I suppressed a sigh. "The board's decision was unanimous," I offered, providing her with an additional bragging point that was actually meaningful to me professionally. "Unanimous! Diana, did you hear that?" He called away from the phone. "The vote was unanimous." "That's my girl." My girl had graduated from the diminutive birthday girl to something closer to genuine pride. Progress, however small. We should celebrate, Dad continued. How about dinner this weekend? Your mother will prepare your favorites. The invitation was well-intentioned but reflected their continued inability to see me as a full adult. At 36, having just secured a position commanding substantial responsibility, I was still being offered a childhood-style celebration centered around Mom's cooking, rather than the type of restaurant outing they would suggest for Nathan or Vanessa's achievements. Actually, I have plans this weekend with colleagues, I said, establishing a gentle boundary, but I'll be formally introduced at Tuesday's board meeting. You're welcome to attend if you'd like. Tuesday, he repeated, and I could hear him consulting their shared calendar. We have the hospital foundation dinner that evening. I understand if you can't make it, I replied, unsurprised. It's rather last-minute notice. Nonsense, Dad said with unexpected firmness. This is important. The foundation dinner has 300 attendees. They won't miss us. What time is the board meeting? His willingness to skip a high-profile social event registered as a seismic shift in our family dynamics. 7 o'clock at district headquarters. Business attire. We'll be there, he promised. Your mother is already planning what to wear. After ending the call, I returned to the staff celebration, touched by my colleagues' genuine happiness for my advancement even though it meant I'd be leaving our school. Their congratulations carried no subtext of surprise or recalculation of my worth, just pure support from people who had always recognized the value of educational work. Speech, called Mr. Sanchez, the teacher whose evaluation I'd rescheduled for my interview. I hadn't prepared anything, but standing among these dedicated educators who had shaped my professional journey, words came easily. When I started teaching 15 years ago, I couldn't have imagined standing here today, I began. Not because I lacked ambition, but because I found such profound fulfillment in the classroom that advancement seemed almost beside the point. What could be more important than directly impacting young minds? Nods of understanding rippled through the room. But over time, I've realized that leadership positions allow us to multiply that impact. As superintendent, I'll carry the wisdom of classroom experience into every decision. I'll remember what it feels like when policy changes land on teachers already stretched thin. I'll prioritize student needs over administrative convenience because I've looked into the eyes of struggling readers and seen their potential waiting to be unlocked. I paused, emotion tightening my throat. I wouldn't be here without each of you. You've shown me what educational excellence looks like in practice, not just theory. You've supported me on difficult days and celebrated small victories. You've reminded me why education matters when outside voices questioned its value. Looking around the room at these teachers who gave so much of themselves daily, I felt a surge of determination to justify their faith in me. I promised to be the kind of superintendent you deserve, one who remembers what happens in classrooms is our true purpose, one who fights for resources you need, one who recognizes teaching isn't just a job, but a calling that shapes our collective future. The applause that followed felt like a blessing, a commissioning for the work ahead. These were my people, regardless of what my family might finally begin to recognize. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. Olivia helped me select a suitably authoritative outfit for Tuesday's board meeting, a tailored charcoal suit with subtle burgundy accents that conveyed confidence without sacrificing femininity. We strategized responses to likely questions from the press, practiced my brief acceptance speech, and discussed immediate priorities for my first weeks in office. You need to establish your leadership style immediately, Olivia advised as we shared takeout at my dining table Sunday evening. The district has operated under Dr. Marshall's traditional approach for 12 years. People will be watching to see if you're a maintainer or a change agent. I'm neither and both, I replied, considering the nuanced reality of effective leadership. Some systems work beautifully and need preservation. Others require complete reimagining. Discerning which will be my first challenge. Olivia raised her glass in approval. That's why you got the job. You see complexity where others see binary choices. Monday brought my first official day of transition shadowing. Dr. Marshall welcomed me into his spacious office, with its wall of educational certificates, awards, and photographs with various dignitaries. "This will be yours in a few weeks," he said, gesturing to the impressive space. "Though I suspect you'll make some changes." "Perhaps a few," I acknowledged, already envisioning more student artwork and fewer formal portraits. He walked me through his daily schedule: budget meetings, personnel reviews, conversations with the teachers' union representative, conference calls with other district superintendents, and preparation for the next board meeting. "The role is 70% relationship management," he explained as we moved between appointments. "Technical expertise matters, but your ability to balance competing stakeholder interests while maintaining focus on student outcomes will define your success." I absorbed everything, asking clarifying questions and taking careful notes. While the scope of responsibility was certainly daunting, none of the fundamental challenges seemed beyond my capabilities. Years of mediating between different teachers' approaches, managing parent expectations, and advocating for resources had prepared me more thoroughly than I'd realized. By day's end, exhaustion mingled with exhilaration. This position would stretch me professionally in exactly the ways I'd hoped, demanding my best thinking while allowing me to implement ideas I'd developed throughout my career. "Ready for tomorrow's introduction?" Dr. Marshall asked as we concluded our day. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied. "The first public appearance always feels momentous," he said with the wisdom of experience. "Just remember, they chose you for a reason. Stand in that certainty." Tuesday morning, I woke with a curious sense of calm. Whatever happened at the evening's board meeting, whether my family attended or not, whether they finally recognized the value of my career or continued minimizing it, I knew my own worth. That knowledge created an unshakable foundation no external validation could strengthen or diminish. I spent the day at Pinecrest, helping interview candidates for my soon-to-be vacant assistant principal position. Ensuring a smooth transition for the school community that had supported me for years felt like an essential responsibility. By late afternoon, we had identified 2 excellent prospects who would continue the student-centered leadership approach we'd established. At 5:30, I drove home to change for the board meeting, giving myself plenty of time to prepare mentally as well as physically. As I slipped into my carefully selected suit and applied subtle makeup, I recalled all the moments that had led to this milestone. From reading to neighborhood children on my front porch as a 10-year-old, to staying late helping struggling students as a new teacher, to developing district-wide curriculum initiatives as an assistant principal. None of those stepping stones had seemed particularly impressive to my achievement-oriented family, but together they had created a foundation of experience and expertise that uniquely qualified me for district leadership. The path had been valuable precisely because it didn't follow conventional definitions of success. I arrived at district headquarters 45 minutes early, wanting time to center myself before the public ceremony. The boardroom was being prepared for the evening meeting, chairs arranged in neat rows, agenda packets placed at board member stations, a small podium positioned for public remarks. "Ms. Collins," the board secretary greeted me warmly. "Everything's ready for your introduction. We're expecting a larger crowd than usual. Word has spread about your appointment." "Thank you," I replied, touched by her enthusiasm. "Is there anything I should know before we begin?" "Just be yourself," she advised with grandmotherly wisdom. That's who they voted for, after all. I found a quiet corner to review my brief acceptance remarks one final time. The speech was intentionally concise, focusing on student outcomes rather than personal achievement. This moment wasn't about me, but about the educational vision I hope to implement for our community's children. As 7 o'clock approached, the boardroom filled with district administrators, principals from various schools, teacher representatives, and community members. I recognized many faces from my years in the district, their presence offering silent support. At 6:55, just as I was beginning to assume my parents wouldn't attend, they appeared at the boardroom entrance. Mom wore an elegantly tailored designer dress in deep blue, clearly selected to photograph well, while Dad looked distinguished in a charcoal suit nearly identical to mine in color. The coincidence made me smile. More surprising, they weren't alone. Nathan entered behind them, dressed in business attire that suggested he'd come directly from his office, and beside him walked Vanessa, a week early for her marketing conference, immaculate in a cream-colored ensemble that somehow looked both professional and fashion-forward. My entire family had rearranged schedules to attend this ceremony that officially recognized the career path they had so long diminished. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Mom spotted me and waved with uncharacteristic enthusiasm. I crossed the room to greet them, accepting her air kiss with newfound appreciation for the effort it represented. "Rebecca, darling, you look perfect," she assessed, adjusting my collar slightly out of habit. "Very superintendential." I smiled at the invented word. "Thank you for coming. All of you. It means a great deal." "Wouldn't miss it," Dad said gruffly, emotion making him uncharacteristically demonstrative as he squeezed my shoulder. Nathan offered a supportive nod. "Big moment, sis. Wanted to be here." Vanessa surprised me with an actual hug. I moved my flight up. "This is major." Before I could respond, Marcus Williams approached our group. "Miss Collins, we'll be starting shortly. I see you've brought family with you this evening?" "Yes, Mr. Williams. May I introduce my parents, Richard and Diana Collins, and my siblings, Nathan and Vanessa." The board chairman shook hands with each family member, his dignified presence clearly impressing my status-conscious mother. "You must be very proud," he said to my parents. "Your daughter was the standout candidate in an extremely competitive field. Her vision for educational excellence is exactly what our district needs." Dad straightened perceptibly at this validation from a source he instinctively respected. "We've always known Rebecca had unique talents," he claimed with revisionist confidence. Mom nodded agreement, though I caught Vanessa's subtle eye roll at this convenient reimagining of family history. "If you'll excuse us," Williams continued, "we need to begin the meeting. The Collins family will have reserved seats in the front row." As my family moved to their designated seats, Nathan whispered, "Nice suit." We matched, Dad. "Great minds," I murmured back, appreciating his small gesture of solidarity. The board meeting began with standard procedures, roll call, approval of previous minutes, routine business items. I sat in a designated chair near the board table, focusing on steady breathing while awaiting my formal introduction. Finally, Chairman Williams reached the agenda item titled, "Introduction of New Superintendent." "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his resonant voice filling the chamber, "it is my distinct pleasure to introduce the Denver Valley School District's next educational leader. After an exhaustive national search and rigorous interview process, our board unanimously selected an exceptional candidate whose combination of classroom experience, administrative skill, and visionary leadership promises to advance our educational mission significantly." He gestured for me to join him at the podium. As I crossed to stand beside him, I felt a profound sense of arriving exactly where I was meant to be. Rebecca Collins brings 15 years of dedicated service to our district, beginning as a classroom teacher who consistently achieved outstanding student growth metrics, advancing to curriculum coordinator, where she developed our highly successful literacy intervention program, and most recently serving as assistant principal at Pinecrest Elementary, where her leadership helped raise the school's performance rating from acceptable to excellent in just 3 years. Each accomplishment he listed represented countless hours of dedicated work, late nights developing lesson plans. None had seemed particularly noteworthy to my family at the time, but together they had built a compelling case for my leadership capabilities. Ms. Collins holds a master's degree in educational leadership from the University of Colorado, where she graduated with highest honors. She has published research on early literacy interventions in the Journal of Educational Practice and serves on the Governor's Education Advisory Council. I hadn't expected such a comprehensive introduction and felt a flush of gratitude for the board's thorough recognition of my qualifications. From my peripheral vision, I could see my mother sitting straighter with each credential mentioned, her expression shifting from polite support to genuine surprise at this public enumeration of achievements she had largely overlooked. Beyond her impressive credentials, Williams continued, what truly distinguished Ms. Collins in our selection process was her unwavering commitment to student-centered decision-making and her ability to translate educational research into practical classroom applications. She views administration not as an end in itself, but as a means to support the critical work happening in classrooms throughout our district. He turned to face me directly, extending his hand. "It gives me great pleasure to officially welcome our new superintendent of schools. Madam Superintendent Collins, we look forward to your leadership." The formality of the title, Madam Superintendent, created an almost electric moment in the room. Applause erupted, led enthusiastically by the educators present who understood the significance of a classroom teacher rising to the district's highest position. As I shook Chairman Williams' hand, I caught sight of my family's reactions in the front row. Dad appeared genuinely impressed, nodding with newfound respect. Mom sat in wide-eyed reassessment, mentally recategorizing my career from disappointing to prestigious in real time. Nathan gave a subtle thumbs up, while Vanessa actually wiped away what appeared to be an emotional tear. The same sister who had never shown interest in my classroom achievements was moved by this public recognition of my professional worth. The irony wasn't lost on me, but neither was the genuine opportunity for changed family dynamics. Stepping to the microphone, I delivered my prepared remarks, focusing on educational vision rather than personal vindication. I spoke about creating systems where every student could thrive regardless of background, supporting teachers as the frontline implementers of educational excellence, and building stronger connections between schools and communities. Throughout my brief speech, I maintained eye contact with various sections of the audience: the educators who had supported my journey, the board members who had selected me, and yes, the family members who were seeing me in a new professional light for the first time. As the formal ceremony concluded and the meeting moved to other business, I was immediately surrounded by well-wishers, district administrators offering support, teachers expressing enthusiasm for my leadership, community members sharing hopes for their schools. Through this receiving line, I watched my family standing somewhat awkwardly to the side, witnessing firsthand the professional respect I commanded in educational circles. They observed numerous people approaching me with genuine admiration, seeking my insights on educational matters, and treating me with the deference accorded to an important community leader. This was a side of my professional life they had never bothered to see before. The impact and influence I had developed through years of dedicated work, in a field they had dismissed as lacking prestige. When the crowd finally thinned, I made my way back to my family. Mom immediately embraced me with uncharacteristic emotion. "Rebecca, that was extraordinary," she said, her voice carrying genuine awe. "I had no idea you were held in such high regard." The unintentional revelation in her statement, that she had never before considered that my career might generate substantial professional respect, might have stung in the past. Today, it simply illustrated how thoroughly she had misjudged the value of educational leadership. "The superintendent position is quite significant," Dad added, clearly impressed by the community standing the role commanded. "The governor's office was represented here tonight." "Education impacts everyone," I replied simply. "Its influence extends far beyond classroom walls." "We should celebrate properly," Nathan suggested. "I've made reservations at Marcel's." My treat. The fact that he'd arranged dinner reservations in advance suggested more confidence in my abilities than he'd previously expressed. This small gesture of faith touched me unexpectedly. "I'd like that," I agreed, genuinely wanting to extend this moment of family connection. As we prepared to leave, Chairman Williams approached our group once more. "Madam Superintendent, I won't keep you from your celebration. I just wanted to mention that the governor has requested you join the Education Policy Summit next month. His office will be in touch with details." He turned to my parents with a warm smile. "Mr. and Mrs. Collins, you've raised a remarkable daughter. Her commitment to educational excellence will benefit thousands of children in our community for years to come. There's no more important work." As he walked away, I witnessed something I'd never seen before. My achievement-oriented father rendered momentarily speechless by someone else's assessment of my career value. That evening at Marcel's, one of Denver's most exclusive restaurants, our family dynamic underwent subtle but significant shifts. Nathan asked thoughtful questions about my educational priorities. Vanessa expressed genuine curiosity about how curriculum decisions were made. Mom recounted compliments from her friends with connections to the district. Dad proposed a toast acknowledging the importance of my work. Perhaps the first time he had publicly recognized the value of education as a career path. "To Rebecca," he said, raising his glass, "who followed her own path with determination and proved that success comes in many forms. We're proud of you, Superintendent Collins." As glasses clinked around the table, I realized that while external validation shouldn't determine self-worth, there was still profound healing in having my family finally recognize the value of my chosen profession. The title Madam Superintendent had forced a recalibration of their perspective, opening the possibility for more authentic connection based on mutual respect rather than conformity to a single definition of success. What I couldn't know then was how completely this evening would transform our family relationships moving forward, or how my leadership journey would challenge each family member to reconsider their own measures of meaningful achievement. The board meeting introduction was just the beginning of a profound evolution in our collective understanding of success, purpose, and the true nature of valuable work. The 6 months following my appointment as superintendent unfolded like chapters in a book I hadn't realized I was writing. July brought the whirlwind of transition, moving from my modest office at Pinecrest to the superintendent's spacious headquarters, meeting with each principal in the district individually, and developing my first public initiatives. August saw the implementation of our expanded literacy program across all elementary schools, a project that had been my passion for years and now finally had the necessary resources and authority behind it. September heralded the new school year, my first as superintendent. I visited each of our 27 schools during the opening weeks, determined to establish myself as an accessible leader who remembered classroom realities. Teachers expressed surprise and appreciation at seeing the superintendent helping kindergartners find their cubbies, sitting in on high school physics classes, and eating lunch with middle schoolers. "You're not what we expected," one veteran teacher confided during my visit to her classroom. When I asked what she had expected, she smiled wryly. Someone who'd forgotten what teaching actually feels like. Someone who speaks in buzzwords rather than practical solutions. "If I ever become that person," I told her seriously, "please stage an intervention." October brought our first major challenge, a budget shortfall that required difficult decisions about resource allocation. I held transparent community forums, explaining the financial constraints while refusing to sacrifice essential classroom supports. By repurposing administrative funds and temporarily reducing central office positions, including eliminating one assistant superintendent role, we preserved teacher jobs and student programs. The Denver Post ran a profile headlined, "New Superintendent Puts Classrooms First, Collins Cuts Admin to Save Student Programs," complete with a photo of me working alongside teachers during a professional development session. The positive coverage surprised my family, who seemed genuinely impressed by my handling of the crisis. "That took courage," Dad commented during one of our newly established monthly dinners. Cutting administrative positions isn't exactly making friends in your leadership circle. "Leadership isn't about making friends," I replied. "It's about making the right decisions for the right reasons, even when they're difficult." He studied me with newfound respect. I've said something similar about business for years. "Perhaps leadership principles transcend industries," I suggested, and watched as he considered this possibility with the seriousness it deserved. November was marked by the Governor's Education Summit, where I presented our district's innovative approach to literacy intervention. State leaders from across the political spectrum expressed interest in scaling our model, and the Education Commissioner invited me to join a task force developing statewide literacy standards. Throughout these months, my relationship with my family continued its gradual metamorphosis. The transformation wasn't instantaneous or without occasional backsliding, but the trajectory moved steadily toward mutual respect and genuine understanding. Nathan invited me to speak at his company's Education Investment Forum, a gesture that acknowledged both my expertise and the business relevance of educational leadership. Vanessa began calling regularly, our conversations evolving from surface pleasantries to meaningful exchanges about our respective challenges and triumphs. Mom proudly introduced me to her social circle, no longer with apologetic explanations about my career choice, but with enthusiastic descriptions of my latest initiatives. Most significantly, Dad began seeking my perspective on leadership challenges in his own business, recognizing that effective management principles crossed professional boundaries. Our conversations shifted from one-sided reports of his business accomplishments to genuine exchanges between equals, each bringing valuable insights from different sectors. December brought an unexpected call from Dr. Marcus Williams, who had moved from board chairman to the governor's office as special advisor on education policy. "Madam Superintendent," he greeted me with the formal title that had now become comfortable. "I'm calling with an interesting opportunity. The governor is establishing a Blue Ribbon Commission to reimagine education funding across the state. He specifically requested your participation, citing your innovative approach to resource allocation during your recent budget challenge. The appointment was a significant honor, recognition that my leadership had implications beyond our district. I accepted with enthusiasm, though it would mean additional responsibilities in an already demanding schedule. That evening, I called my grandmother Ellen, now living in a retirement community in Arizona. Our weekly conversations had remained a constant source of support throughout my career journey. "A gubernatorial commission," she exclaimed when I shared the news. "Rebecca, I always knew your path would lead to significant influence. You understand education from the inside out. That perspective is invaluable at policy levels. I just hope I can make meaningful contributions," I admitted. "These commissions sometimes produce impressive reports that gather dust rather than drive change." "Then make sure this one's different," she said with characteristic directness. "You've never been afraid to speak truth to power. That's why they want you, whether they realize it or not." Her confidence bolstered mine as I prepared for my first commission meeting in early January. The appointment coincided with another significant event, the Collins family's traditional New Year's gathering at my parents' home. This year, for the first time, I approached the event without dread or defensive preparation. My professional standing had created a bridge of understanding, however imperfect, with my achievement-oriented family. The evening began with cocktails in the living room, the space decorated with my mother's customary elegant restraint. Nathan arrived with his new girlfriend Sarah, a climate scientist whose intellectual credentials clearly impressed even our status-conscious mother. Vanessa came solo. Having recently ended a relationship with a marketing executive she decided was, quote, "more flash than substance." "I'm learning to value depth over dazzle," she told me privately as we helped Mom arrange appetizers. "Watching you these past months has been educational." The comment, delivered with a self-deprecating smile, revealed how thoroughly her perception of me had evolved. Once dismissed as the underachieving middle child, I had become something of a model for authentic success, achievement aligned with personal values rather than external validation. Dad called us to attention by tapping his glass. "Before dinner, I'd like to propose our first toast of the evening," he announced. "This past year has brought significant achievements for our family. Nathan's firm expanded to include sustainable investment portfolios that are outperforming market expectations. Vanessa has been promoted to marketing director for the entire Midwest region. These were the typical accomplishments our family had always celebrated: financial growth, corporate advancement, measurable status improvements." I prepared myself for the brief acknowledgement of my work that would inevitably follow, the obligatory mention that had always felt like an afterthought. Instead, Dad's expression softened as he turned toward me. "And Rebecca has not only assumed leadership of one of Colorado's largest school districts, but has distinguished herself nationally through innovative programs that are changing how we approach education. The governor's appointment to the state commission is recognition of what we've been too slow to fully appreciate, that her commitment to educational excellence represents success of the highest order." The room fell momentarily silent, the unexpected depth of his acknowledgement hanging in the air between us. This wasn't merely recognition of a title or position, it was explicit appreciation for the substance of my work and its meaningful impact. "To the Collins family," Dad continued, raising his glass higher, "may we continue supporting each other's unique paths to contribution and fulfillment, whatever forms they may take." As glasses clinked around the circle, Mom wiped an uncharacteristic tear. "Well said, Richard." Dinner conversation flowed with surprising ease, moving between our various professional worlds with genuine interest rather than hierarchical comparison. Nathan described investment challenges that paralleled educational resource decisions. Vanessa shared marketing insights that connected to my community engagement strategies. The artificial boundaries between business and education, profit and public service, began dissolving into recognition of our interconnected professional ecosystem. After dessert, Dad asked if I would join him in his study, a wood-paneled sanctuary that had once felt like the exclusive domain of serious business conversations, from which my educational career had been implicitly excluded. "I have something for you," he said, closing the door behind us. From his desk drawer, he removed a small velvet box. "This was meant to be your birthday gift last month, but it wasn't quite ready. The jeweler finished it yesterday." Inside the box lay an elegant silver pendant, a stylized apple formed of intricate metalwork with a small diamond at its core. "It's beautiful," I said, genuinely touched by the thoughtfulness of a gift that acknowledged rather than diminished my educational identity. "Turn it over," Dad instructed softly. Engraved on the back were words that caused my breath to catch. "To Rebecca, who teaches us all the true meaning of success. Love, Dad." I looked up to find his eyes suspiciously bright. "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past months," he said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "About success. About values. About the messages I've sent throughout your life. Dad, you don't need to." He held up his hand. "Please, let me say this. I built my life around certain metrics of achievement. Financial growth, social position, tangible status symbols. I measured your choices against those same narrow standards and found them wanting, not because they lacked value, but because I lacked vision." The admission, delivered in the sanctum of his study, where business triumphs had always been the highest currency, carried profound weight. Watching you lead with such clarity of purpose these past months has forced me to reconsider my own definitions of meaningful work. The budget decisions you made, prioritizing student needs over administrative convenience, even at personal professional cost, displayed a courage I've rarely seen in corporate leadership. He gestured toward the bookshelves, lined with business texts and biographies of industrial titans. "I've spent decades studying success principles, but perhaps I've been looking in too narrow a field." "We all have different gifts," I said gently. "Your business acumen built something remarkable." "Yes, but at what cost?" he asked, more to himself than to me. "I created financial security but also a family culture, where worth was measured in dollars and titles rather than character and contribution." He picked up the pendant, holding it carefully between his fingers. "This symbol, the apple, it's too simplistic for the complexity of educational leadership you provide, but it represents my belated recognition of the nobility in your chosen path." As he fastened the necklace around my neck, I felt the weight of decades of misunderstanding begin to lift. The pendant wasn't merely jewelry. It was tangible acknowledgement of my professional value from the source whose validation I had simultaneously craved and resented needing. "I'm proud of you, Rebecca," he said, his hands resting briefly on my shoulders. "Not because of your title or the governor's appointment, but because you remained true to your calling despite our failure to understand it. That kind of integrity is rarer and more valuable than any business success I've achieved." The conversation marked a turning point, not just in my relationship with my father, but in our entire family's understanding of meaningful contribution. The artificial hierarchy of careers that had placed education near the bottom and business or medicine at the top began dissolving into a more nuanced appreciation of purpose-driven work across sectors. January brought the first meeting of the Governor's Education Commission, where I found myself seated alongside university presidents, business leaders, and policy experts. The governor opened the session with clear expectations. "Colorado's children deserve an education system funded for excellence, not merely adequacy," he stated. "Your charge is to reimagine how we resource our schools to create world-class learning opportunities for every student, regardless of zip code or family circumstance." As discussion began, I noticed several commission members deferring to university academics or business leaders, rather than practicing educators. Old patterns die hard, even in progressive settings. During a break, I approached Dr. Williams with my observations. "I've noticed our K-12 practitioners aren't being fully engaged in the conversation," I said carefully. Their frontline experience seems particularly valuable for this work. He studied me thoughtfully. You're right. Old hierarchies are surfacing unconsciously. Perhaps you might address this directly when we reconvene? The suggestion was both an opportunity and a challenge. Speaking truth to power had always been easier in theory than practice, particularly in a room filled with influential figures whose support I might need for future district initiatives. When the session resumed, I waited for an appropriate opening, then requested the floor. As we develop recommendations for education funding, I began, I'd like to suggest we intentionally center the voices of those closest to classroom implementation. Our university colleagues offer valuable research perspectives, and our business leaders bring important efficiency insights. But K-12 educators and administrators understand the daily realities of resource deployment in ways theory alone cannot capture. A brief silence followed before the superintendent from a rural mountain district spoke up. Thank you, Superintendent Collins. Those of us leading districts with unique challenges sometimes feel our practical expertise is overlooked in policy discussions. The conversation shifted noticeably after that intervention, with more equitable participation across professional backgrounds. After the meeting, several commission members thanked me for addressing the implicit hierarchy that had been limiting our collective wisdom. The governor himself stopped me as I was gathering my materials. That was an important course correction, Superintendent Collins. Sometimes we need someone brave enough to name the elephants in the room. I hope I wasn't overstepping, I replied. Quite the opposite, he assured me. That's precisely why I wanted you on this commission. You bring both educational expertise and the courage to ensure it's properly valued in our deliberations. Driving home, I reflected on how this small act of professional assertion connected to my personal journey. Both required recognizing and addressing implicit hierarchies that diminished certain contributions, while elevating others based on arbitrary status metrics rather than actual value. The Commission's work continued through winter and early spring, meeting monthly to develop comprehensive recommendations for the legislature. I threw myself into researching equitable funding models from high-performing education systems worldwide, determined to help create something transformative rather than incremental. Between commission meetings and district responsibilities, family dynamics continued evolving in unexpected ways. Nathan invited me to guest lecture in a business ethics course he taught as an adjunct at the University of Denver, specifically requesting I address ethical leadership and public service. Your budget decisions last fall created a fascinating case study in values-based leadership, he explained. My business students rarely consider public sector examples, but the principles transcend sectors. The invitation represented significant growth in his perception of my professional value. Once dismissed as playing school, my educational leadership now warranted serious academic consideration alongside corporate case studies. Vanessa's evolution proved equally meaningful. During one of our now regular sister dinners, she confessed growing dissatisfaction with marketing luxury products. Don't get me wrong, she said, swirling her wine thoughtfully. I'm good at what I do, and the compensation is excellent. But lately I've been asking myself, what am I really contributing? Am I making anything better for anyone except shareholders? Those are important questions, I acknowledged, recognizing the existential questioning that often accompanies mid-career success. Watching you these past months has been unsettling, she admitted. You face challenges as complex as any in the corporate world, but your work has such clear purpose. Every decision ultimately connects to actual children's futures. I reached across the table to squeeze her hand. Different paths offer different rewards. Your marketing creativity has genuine value. Perhaps, she said, not entirely convinced. But I'm exploring ways to redirect those skills toward more meaningful applications. I've been talking with some educational technology startups about heading their marketing efforts. The compensation would be lower, but the purpose clearer. This remarkable shift, my status-conscious sister considering purpose over paycheck, reflected profound recalibration of values within our family system. Even Mom's perspective continued evolving in subtle but significant ways. When a prominent society friend questioned the wisdom of wasting my intellect on public education rather than more lucrative fields, Mom's response surprised everyone at her garden club luncheon. Education isn't where smart people go when they can't succeed elsewhere, she reportedly declared. It's where the most forward-thinking leaders go to shape our collective future. My daughter could have chosen any number of more financially rewarding paths, but she selected the one with the greatest potential for meaningful impact. The anecdote reached me through another administrator whose mother attended the same social circle. Mrs. Henderson said your mother defended educational careers with the ferocity of a lioness protecting her cubs, she reported with evident amusement. Apparently, several women with teacher daughters expressed profound gratitude afterward. These shifts, large and small, public and private, continued accumulating through winter and into spring. By April, the Governor's Commission had completed its draft recommendations for revolutionary changes to education funding in Colorado. The proposal included equity-based formulas addressing historical imbalances, dedicated funding for innovation, and teacher compensation reforms designed to recognize the true professional value of educators. The Commission's public hearing presenting these recommendations coincided with another significant family milestone: Dad's retirement announcement. After 40 years building his real estate development company, he had decided to transition leadership to his executive team, while remaining as chairman emeritus. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.